The Pyramids of Giza. On the vast desert plains of Giza, three colossal pyramids rise toward the heavens, their golden peaks once gleaming in the harsh sunlight. These were not just monumental structures. They were eternal tombs, a gateway to the afterlife for the pharaohs who commanded their creation. The largest of them all was the Great Pyramid, built for Pharaoh Khufu. Standing over 146 meters tall, it was the tallest man-made structure on Earth for nearly 4,000 years. Over 2 million limestone blocks, each weighing several tons, were meticulously stacked to create this massive pyramid. But how did the ancient Egyptians achieve this feat of engineering? Theories abound. Some say they built massive ramps of mud brick and sand, hauling the giant stones to the top. Others suggest the use of advanced pulley systems or even an internal spiral ramp hidden within the pyramid itself. But what is certain is that it took tens of thousands of workers, not slaves, but skilled laborers, farmers, and craftsmen who worked in organized teams, proud of their sacred duty. These workers left their mark too. Graffiti inside the hidden chambers of the Great Pyramid reveals the names of their teams: the drunkards of Menkaura, the friends of Khufu. They were not just faceless laborers. They were real people who believed their work would help the pharaoh ascend to the stars. But the pyramids were more than just tombs. They were spiritual beacons. Carved into their walls were the pyramid texts, the oldest known religious writings in history. These sacred spells and prayers were meant to guide the pharaoh's soul through the dangers of the afterlife and ensure his place among the gods. Within the dark, twisting corridors of the pyramids, hidden chambers held the treasures of the pharaohs: golden jewelry, alabaster jars of precious oils, and sacred texts. But not all treasures were meant to be found. Some remain lost, hidden behind sealed walls and secret passages. The pyramids of Giza are not just monuments of stone. They are a testament to the ambition, faith, and skill of the ancient Egyptians. They stand as silent guardians over the desert, a reminder of a time when kings sought immortality in stone. The Curse of the Mummy. Deep within the dark, winding corridors of Egypt's ancient tombs, the air grows heavy. Shadows dance on the walls, and a chilling silence lingers. This is the realm of the mummies, the eternal guardians of the pharaohs, resting within their sacred tombs. But for those who dare disturb these ancient slumbering kings, whispers speak of a deadly curse. The Curse of the Mummy is one of Egypt's most enduring legends. It is said that anyone who violates the sacred tomb of a pharaoh will be struck by a terrible fate. Strange deaths, unexplained illnesses, and eerie misfortunes have all been blamed on the curse. But where did this terrifying tale begin? One of the most famous stories of the curse surrounds the discovery of the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922 by British archaeologist Howard Carter. When Carter and his team entered the tomb, they found treasures beyond imagination: golden masks, jeweled daggers, and the mummified body of the boy king, resting in his golden sarcophagus. But soon after, a series of strange events began. Lord Carnarvon, Carter's financial backer, died suddenly from an infected mosquito bite. Newspapers claimed that at the exact moment of his death, all the lights in Cairo went out. Other members of the expedition fell ill or met with accidents, fueling the legend of the curse. Even the canary that Carter brought with him was mysteriously killed by a cobra, a symbol of the pharaoh's divine protection. But was the curse real, or was it just a story created by the newspapers? Some scientists believe that the curse could have been caused by ancient molds or toxic gases trapped within the sealed tomb for thousands of years. Others think it was nothing more than coincidence. Yet the legend endures. Stories of cursed tombs appear not only in Tutankhamun's tale, but in the stories of other explorers who dared to open the resting places of the pharaohs. The curse is often described in ancient hieroglyphs, warning, "Death shall come on swift wings to him who disturbs the peace of the king." In the darkness of these ancient tombs, the curse of the mummy is a warning, a reminder that the dead do not take kindly to being disturbed. Cleopatra, the last pharaoh. Amid the shimmering sands of Egypt and the bustling streets of Alexandria, one name has echoed through history as a symbol of beauty, intelligence, and ambition: Cleopatra. But Cleopatra was more than just a beautiful queen. She was the last pharaoh of Egypt, a woman who ruled with cunning and charisma in a world dominated by powerful men. Cleopatra VII was born into the Ptolemaic dynasty, a line of Greek rulers who had governed Egypt since the time of Alexander the Great. Unlike many of her predecessors, Cleopatra embraced the Egyptian culture. She spoke the Egyptian language, worshipped the Egyptian gods, and presented herself as the living goddess Isis. Her devotion to Egypt won her the loyalty of her people. But Cleopatra's rise to power was not without struggle. At just 18 years old, she became queen alongside her younger brother Ptolemy III. Yet, their partnership quickly turned to rivalry. Forced into exile by her own brother, Cleopatra was determined to reclaim her throne. And she would do so in a way that would change history forever. Cleopatra's greatest weapon was her charm, and she used it to forge powerful alliances. She sailed to meet Julius Caesar, the most powerful man, in Rome, wrapped in a carpet, a dramatic entrance that captured Caesar's attention. The two became lovers, and with Caesar's support, Cleopatra defeated her brother and reclaimed her throne. But even after Caesar's assassination, Cleopatra's story did not end. She soon turned her gaze to another Roman general, Mark Antony. Together, they shared both love and ambition, becoming one of history's most famous couples. Cleopatra bore Antony 3 children, and together they ruled over a vast Eastern empire. Yet their love would be their downfall. Rome's new leader, Octavian, later Augustus, saw Cleopatra and Antony as a threat. A great war erupted, the Battle of Actium, where Octavian's forces crushed the fleet of Cleopatra and Antony. Fleeing back to Egypt, Cleopatra and Antony faced defeat. Antony died in Cleopatra's arms, and with her kingdom lost, Cleopatra chose to die on her own terms. The legend says she allowed a deadly asp, a venomous snake, to bite her, but some historians believe she may have used poison instead. With her death, Egypt fell into Roman hands, ending over 3,000 years of Egyptian rule. But Cleopatra's legacy did not die with her. Her intelligence, her courage, and her passionate love affairs with 2 of Rome's greatest generals made her a legend. Even today, Cleopatra remains one of the most famous women in history, a queen who refused to be forgotten. In the land of Egypt, where the Nile brought life and the desert whispered of eternity, the people believed in a world filled with gods. These gods were not distant figures in the heavens. They were present in every part of life, from the rising sun to the dark halls of the afterlife. The gods of Egypt were many, and each held a sacred role in the universe. At the heart of this divine pantheon was Ra, the sun god, who sailed across the sky in his golden bark by day, bringing light and life. At night he descended into the underworld, battling chaos before rising again with the dawn. Ra was the source of all creation, the father of all gods. Beside Ra stood Osiris, the god of the underworld, who was once a wise and just king of Egypt. Betrayed and murdered by his brother Set, Osiris was restored to life by his loving wife, Isis. He became the ruler of the dead, and his green-skinned figure symbolized life after death. Isis herself was one of the most beloved goddesses, the mother of magic and healing, protector of children, and the embodiment of divine motherhood. Her devotion to Osiris and her power to resurrect him made her a symbol of love and life. Horus, the falcon-headed god, was the son of Isis and Osiris. As the god of kingship and the sky, Horus was often depicted as a fierce warrior, avenging his father and protecting the pharaohs, who were seen as his earthly incarnation. But the gods of Egypt were not all benevolent. Set, the god of chaos, storms, and the desert, was a dark and violent figure, forever seeking to disrupt the order of the world. Yet even Set had his place in the divine order, for chaos was a part of the balance. The gods of Egypt were many and varied. Anubis, the jackal-headed god, guided souls through the underworld and oversaw the sacred process of mummification. Thoth, with the head of an ibis, was the god of wisdom, writing, and knowledge. Bastet, the cat goddess, protected homes and families, while Hathor, the goddess of love and music, brought joy to the hearts of the people. Temples dedicated to these gods rose across Egypt, their walls covered in hieroglyphs telling stories of divine battles, sacred rituals, and the blessings of the gods. Priests performed daily rituals, offering food, incense, and prayers to the statues of the gods, who were believed to inhabit these sacred images. Yet the gods were not only in the temples, they were in the fields, where Hapi, the god of the Nile, brought the floodwaters. They were in the stars above, where Nut, the goddess of the sky, stretched her starry body over the world. The Egyptians lived in a world where the divine was everywhere. But what did the gods promise their faithful? They promised order, prosperity, and above all, life after death. For the gods of Egypt were not just the masters of the living. They were the guides of the dead, and those who served them faithfully hoped to join them in the field of reeds, a paradise beyond the tomb. In the shadowed halls of the temples, beneath the watchful eyes of Anubis, the jackal-headed god of the dead, a sacred ritual unfolded, the art of mummification. For the ancient Egyptians, death was not the end but a passage to the afterlife, and to ensure a safe journey, the body of the deceased had to be carefully preserved. This was the sacred duty of the embalmers. The process of mummification began with purification. The body was washed in the holy waters of the Nile, a final blessing from the life-giving river. Once cleansed, the body was taken to the house of purification, where the embalmers, priests trained in the sacred rites, began their work. First, they removed the internal organs, which were believed to be vulnerable to decay. The lungs, stomach, liver, and intestines were carefully taken out and placed in canopic jars, each jar guarded by one of the 4 sons of Horus. The heart, however, was left inside the body, for it was considered the seat of the soul and would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at, the goddess of truth, in the afterlife. Next, the body was dried using natron, a natural salt found in the deserts of Egypt. This powerful substance drew out all moisture, leaving the body perfectly preserved. For 40 days, the body lay in natron, becoming a dry, lifeless husk. But this was only the beginning. Once dried, The body was anointed with sacred oils and perfumes, restoring its softness and giving it the sweet scent of eternity. Precious amulets, each bearing protective spells, were placed between the linen wrappings that would soon cover the body. These wrappings were not just cloth. They were a second skin, inscribed with sacred texts, each layer a prayer for protection. The face of the mummy was often covered with a funerary mask, a portrait of the deceased, ensuring that the soul would recognize its body in the afterlife. The most famous of these masks is that of Tutankhamun, a masterpiece of gold and precious stones, a face that has become the symbol of ancient Egypt itself. But the body alone was not enough. The embalmers performed the opening of the mouth ceremony, a ritual that symbolically restored the senses of the deceased, allowing them to see, speak, and eat in the afterlife. Priests touched the lips of the mummy with sacred tools, chanting prayers as incense filled the air. Finally, the mummy was placed inside a coffin, or sometimes a series of coffins, one inside the other, like a protective shell. These coffins were decorated with spells and images of the gods, each one a shield against the dangers of the afterlife. And then the journey truly began. The mummy was placed in its tomb, surrounded by treasures, food, and sacred texts like the Book of the Dead, a guide to the underworld. Priests sealed the tomb with prayers, and darkness enveloped the sacred chamber. But for the ancient Egyptians, this was not the end. The soul of the deceased would rise, pass through the hall of judgment, where the heart would be weighed against the feather of Ma'at. If the heart was light, the soul would enter the field of reeds, a paradise of eternal peace. But if it was heavy with sin, it would be devoured by Ammit, the soul eater. The art of mummification was not just a ritual. It was a promise of life beyond death, of an eternity spent among the gods. Beneath the blazing sun of the Egyptian desert, guarding the Giza Plateau with timeless silence, lies one of the most mysterious monuments of the ancient world, the Great Sphinx. Carved from a single block of limestone, it has the body of a lion and the head of a man, staring endlessly to the east, as if awaiting the return of a forgotten age. The Great Sphinx of Giza stands over 20 meters tall and stretches 73 meters in length. It is the largest monolithic statue in the world and one of the oldest. Yet, despite its grandeur, many questions still surround its origins. Who built it? When was it carved? And what secrets lie beneath its weathered paws? Most scholars believe the Sphinx was built during the reign of Pharaoh Khafra, around 2500 BCE. Its face is thought to resemble that of Khafra himself, symbolizing royal power and divine protection. In this view, the lion's body represents strength, while the human head shows intelligence and authority, a powerful blend of earthly and divine might. Yet others suggest the Sphinx may be far older. Some researchers point to signs of water erosion on its body, which would suggest it was carved long before the time of Khafre, perhaps over 9,000 years ago, when heavy rains once fell on the Sahara. If true, the Sphinx could predate all known Egyptian civilization, guarding secrets even more ancient than the pyramids themselves. The mysteries don't stop there. Between the Sphinx's paws lies the dream stele, a large stone tablet erected by Pharaoh Thutmose IV. According to the inscription, while still a young prince, Thutmose fell asleep in the shadow of the Sphinx. In his dream, the Sphinx spoke to him, promising that if Thutmose cleared away the sands that buried it, he would be rewarded with the throne of Egypt. Thutmose did so, and he became pharaoh, leading many to believe the Sphinx holds divine Power legends also speak of hidden chambers beneath the Sphinx. Some ancient texts refer to a hall of records said to contain the lost wisdom of Atlantis or scrolls from a forgotten age. While modern technology has detected cavities beneath the Sphinx, no one knows for sure what lies inside. Egyptian authorities have restricted access, adding to the aura of mystery. The Sphinx has also suffered greatly through the ages. Time and wind have worn its once sharp features. Its nose, famously missing, was not shot off by Napoleon, as some tales claim, but likely destroyed by later iconoclasts. Despite all it has endured, the Sphinx still stands, watching over the desert with a silent gaze. To the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx was not just a statue. It was a guardian, a sacred sentinel that protected the pyramids and the souls of the pharaohs. Its image appeared in temples and tombs, always connected to mystery, divinity, and power. Today, the Sphinx continues to inspire awe and speculation. Tourists travel from across the globe to stand before it, wondering, like so many before them, what it truly means, and what secrets it still hides beneath the sands of time. Beyond the lush banks of the Nile, hidden in the desolate cliffs of western Thebes, lies a place of shadows and silence, the Valley of the Kings. For over 5 centuries, it served as the sacred burial ground for the pharaohs of Egypt's new kingdom. Unlike the towering pyramids of the Old Kingdom, these tombs were carved deep into the rock, far from plain sight, meant to protect the rulers of Egypt in both life and death. The decision to move royal burials to this valley was not random. The pyramids, with all their grandeur, had become targets. Tomb robbers grew bolder, and the bodies of kings were no longer safe. So the pharaohs chose secrecy over spectacle. In the Valley of the Kings, their tombs could be hidden from looters, guarded by curses and sealed in eternal silence. But these tombs were no less magnificent. Cut into the cliffs with astonishing precision, each tomb was a palace for the dead. Long corridors led to burial chambers adorned with brilliant paintings, gods and demons, stars and spells, carved into the walls in dazzling colors. The texts on the walls came from sacred books such as the Book of the Dead, Book of Gates, and Amduat, guides for the pharaoh's soul to navigate the dangers of the underworld and reach the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. Over 60 tombs have been discovered in the valley, belonging to some of Egypt's most legendary rulers, Seti I, Ramses II, Thutmose III, and more. Each tomb is a reflection of the king it was made for. Some simple and modest, others vast and richly decorated. And then there is the most famous of all, the tomb of Tutankhamun. In 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter uncovered the nearly intact tomb of the boy king, a discovery that shocked the world. Behind a sealed door lay a chamber glittering with gold. Thrones, chariots, statues, and a solid gold coffin cradling the perfectly preserved mummy of Tutankhamun. It was the most complete royal tomb ever found, and sparked renewed global fascination with ancient Egypt. But the valley was never truly safe from time. Despite the secrecy, many tombs were still looted in antiquity. Earthquakes cracked open entrances. Floods carried debris into tunnels. And over thousands of years, the once bright colors of the tombs faded, and their legends fell into silence. Today, archaeologists continue to work in the valley, uncovering new tombs and rediscovering lost artifacts. Modern scanning technologies have revealed hidden chambers and doorways, some still unopened. What lies behind them? More treasures? More mummies? More forgotten kings? To the ancient Egyptians, the Valley of the Kings was a sacred place, the gate to eternity. Here, the pharaohs hoped to rest forever, protected by the gods, waiting to be reborn with the sun. For centuries, the world gazed in wonder at the temples, tombs, and treasures of ancient Egypt, but their meanings remained a mystery. The beautiful hieroglyphs carved into stone walls and papyrus scrolls were like whispers from a forgotten world, their voices silenced by time. No one knew how to read them. The language of the pharaohs was lost, until one stone changed everything. That stone was the Rosetta Stone. Discovered in 1799 by French soldiers near the town of Rosetta, modern-day Rashid, in the Nile Delta, the Rosetta Stone was a slab of dark granite, just over a meter tall. It wasn't made of gold, and it didn't shine with jewels. But it held something far more valuable: knowledge. What made the Rosetta Stone so special was not its size or appearance, but what was written on it. The inscription on the stone was a royal decree issued in 196 BCE during the reign of Pharaoh Ptolemy III. But the true power of the stone lay in how it was written, in 3 different scripts. Hieroglyphic, the sacred script used by priests and carved on temple walls. Demotic, the common script used for daily Egyptian writing. Ancient Greek, the language of the ruling elite at the time. This was the key. Because scholars could already read ancient Greek, they realized the Rosetta Stone offered a rare opportunity. If all 3 scripts said the same thing, then perhaps, at last, the secrets of the hieroglyphs could be unlocked. But it was no easy task. For years, linguists and historians struggled to crack the code. The breakthrough came from a brilliant French scholar named Jean-François Champollion. After years of tireless work in 1822, he finally succeeded in deciphering the hieroglyphs. He realized that the symbols were not just pictures. They represented sounds, much like letters in an alphabet. This revelation changed everything. Suddenly, the walls of temples could speak. The scrolls in tombs could be read. The names of pharaohs, the prayers to gods, the laws, poems, and dreams of a long-lost civilization, all could be understood once more. The Rosetta Stone became the bridge between ancient and modern worlds. It opened the door to the field of Egyptology, allowing scholars to piece together Egypt's 3,000-year-old history with clarity and detail. Today, the original Rosetta Stone is on display at the British Museum in London, where millions of visitors come to see it each year. It is one of the most important archaeological discoveries in human history, not because of what it is, but because of what it made possible. The Rosetta Stone taught us that language is the key to memory. It reminded us that even civilizations, long buried beneath the sands of time, still have stories to tell, if only we know how to listen. For generations, towering pyramids have stood as the ultimate symbol of ancient Egypt's glory. And for just as long, people have wondered, who built them? Were they slaves, forced to haul massive stones beneath the burning sun? Or were they something more, loyal craftsmen, devoted to a divine purpose? The truth is both surprising and inspiring. Contrary to popular myth, the pyramids were not built by slaves. Modern archaeology has revealed that the workers who built these massive structures were skilled laborers, artisans, masons, stonecutters, and engineers, who took a pride in their work. They were organized into rotating teams, lived in nearby workers' villages, and received food, medical care, and housing. These builders were part of a state-run project, much like a national service. During the flood season, when the Nile overflowed and farmlands were underwater, farmers had time off from agriculture. Instead of being idle, many joined the pyramid workforce, contributing to a project they believed was sacred. Their task? To build a home for the pharaoh in the afterlife, a monument that would ensure the king's soul reached the gods. To the ancient Egyptians, this wasn't just construction, it was an act of worship. The scale of the work was incredible. The Great Pyramid of Khufu was built from over 2 million limestone blocks, each weighing up to 2.5 tons. Workers used copper tools to cut and shape the stone, then moved the blocks using wooden sleds, wet sand, and ingenious systems of ramps. Graffiti left behind inside the Great Pyramid shows team names like the Friends of Khufu or the Drunkards of Menkaure, suggesting a sense of camaraderie and even humor among the crews. These weren't faceless laborers. They were proud Egyptians, part of something monumental. In their free time, these workers had access to bakeries, breweries, and even medical treatment. Excavations of their villages have uncovered bread ovens, fish bones, and remnants of meat, suggesting they ate well. Skeletons also show signs of healed injuries, evidence that when workers were hurt, they were cared for and allowed to recover. Master craftsmen, meanwhile, carved intricate hieroglyphs, lined tomb chambers with beautiful paintings, and built precision-engineered tunnels that still puzzle modern scientists. These were men of immense skill, some of the most advanced builders of the ancient world. And what drove them? Faith, community, duty, the belief that their labor helped ensure eternal life for their king, and by extension, the continuation of Ma'at, the cosmic order of harmony and balance. Today, the stones still stand. But more than that, the legacy of these builders, their names, their jokes, their sweat and dedication, lives on in every block of the pyramids they raised. In the grand tapestry of ancient Egypt's history, few names shine as brightly or as mysteriously as Tutankhamun, the boy king. Though his reign was brief and his achievements few compared to other pharaohs, his legacy became legendary, not because of what he did in life, but because of what was discovered after his death. Tutankhamun became pharaoh around 1332 BCE, when he was just 9 years old. He was born during a time of great upheaval. His father, Akhenaten, had upended Egyptian religion by worshipping a single god, Aten, the sun disk, and abandoning the traditional pantheon. Temples were closed, gods forgotten, and the capital was moved to a new city called Amarna. When Tutankhamun took the throne, Egypt was still reeling from this religious revolution. Under the guidance of powerful advisors, especially the high priest Ai and the general Horemheb, the young king reversed many of his father's changes. He restored the old gods, reopened temples, and brought the capital back to Thebes, regaining the favor of the priests and the people. He also changed his name from Tutankhaten, living image of Aten, to Tutankhamun, living image of Amun, honoring one of Egypt's most powerful gods. But his reign was short. By the time he was about 18 or 19 years old, Tutankhamun died suddenly. The cause of his death remains a mystery. Some theories suggest a broken leg and infection. Others point to malaria, genetic disorders, or even assassination. His mummy showed signs of trauma, but after thousands of years, the truth remains uncertain. And yet, for all his brief and tragic life, it was what came after his death that made him immortal. In 1922, British archaeologist Howard Carter made one of the most important discoveries in history. After years of searching in the Valley of the Kings, he uncovered the intact tomb of Tutankhamun, the first royal tomb found nearly undisturbed in modern times. When Carter peered inside for the first time, he saw wonderful things. The tomb was packed with over 5,000 artifacts: golden statues, ritual chariots, a throne, weapons, furniture, games, perfumes, and the now iconic golden funerary mask, delicately inlaid with lapis lazuli and turquoise. The inner coffin, made of solid gold, cradled the mummified body of the boy king. The discovery sparked global fascination. Newspapers, museums, and the public were swept into what became known as Tutmania. Tutankhamun became a symbol of ancient mystery, wealth, and lost glory. Yet behind the glittering mask was a lonely young ruler. He had no surviving heirs. His tomb, though rich, was smaller than most royal tombs, suggesting his death was unexpected. Some believe his burial chamber may have been originally built for someone else, perhaps Queen Nefertiti, and hastily adapted when he died. Today, Tutankhamun's tomb and treasures remain one of the greatest windows into life and death in ancient Egypt. His story reminds us that even a short life can echo through time, and that forgotten kings may still have secrets to reveal. To the ancient Egyptians, death was not the end. It was a passage, a transition from one world to another. Life was only the beginning. What came next was an extraordinary voyage through the afterlife, filled with gods, monsters, tests, and divine judgment. But if one passed through it successfully, paradise awaited. This journey was called Duat, the Egyptian underworld, a mysterious realm beneath the earth and sky. It was a place of both terror and hope, darkness and divine light. Pharaohs and commoners alike prepared for it during their lifetime, filling their tombs with everything they might need: food, tools, charms, and sacred texts, especially the Book of the Dead. The Book of the Dead wasn't really a book, but a collection of spells, prayers, and maps meant to guide the soul through Duat. It taught the dead how to avoid traps, speak secret words, and call on the help of powerful gods. The goal? To reach the Hall of Judgment, where one's fate would be decided. In this hall stood Osiris, the god of the dead, seated on his throne, surrounded by 42 divine judges. The deceased's heart, believed to be the seat of emotion, thought, and morality, was placed on a scale. On the other side rested a feather, the feather of Maat, representing truth, justice, and cosmic balance. If the heart was light, pure, and free from sin, the scales balanced, and the soul was granted passage to Aru, also known as the Field of Reeds, Egypt's eternal paradise. There, the soul would live forever, in peace, among green fields, flowing rivers, and the company of the gods. But if the heart was heavy with wrongdoing, then it was thrown to Ammit, the devourer, a terrifying beast part lion, crocodile, and hippopotamus. The soul would be consumed, erased from existence, denied eternity. To the Egyptians, this fate, ceasing to exist, was worse than death itself. To protect against such a fate, Egyptians took the afterlife seriously. Tombs were carefully decorated with scenes of the Duat. Magical amulets were placed over the heart, and funerary texts were recited with great care. Even during life, people practiced living with Maat, living truthfully, honorably, and with balance. so their heart would not betray them in the end. Along the journey, the dead face challenges, rivers of fire, gates guarded by serpent demons, and tests that required the correct answers, or divine passwords. But they were not alone. The gods watched, sometimes helping, sometimes judging. Anubis, the god of embalming, guided them with calm precision. Thoth, the god of wisdom, recorded the weighing of the heart. The Egyptian afterlife was not simply a reward. It was a test of a person's life, and the journey through it was a mirror of one's soul. Even now, the tombs of ancient Egypt remain filled with spells and carvings, showing boats sailing through the night sky, gods with jackal heads and stars surrounding the bodies of the dead. These were not just decorations. They were maps, prayers, and promises. The promise was simple, but profound. If you lived a life of truth and passed the trials of Duat, you would find peace that lasted forever. In the golden sands near the Great Sphinx of Giza, half buried beneath centuries of dust and time, lies a structure whispered about by archaeologists and historians alike. A lost monument known as the Temple of the Sphinx. Though rarely spoken of in textbooks, this ancient temple holds mysteries that may predate even the pyramids themselves. Situated directly in front of the Sphinx, this temple, sometimes called the Valley Temple of Khafre, was crafted from massive limestone blocks, many weighing over 100 tons. Unlike other temples in Egypt, which are filled with inscriptions and statues of gods, this one is surprisingly silent. Its smooth stone walls bear almost no writing, and its purpose remains a matter of debate. Some scholars believe it was a mortuary temple, built to honor Pharaoh Khafre, whose pyramid stands nearby. The lack of decoration might be because it was meant to serve as a place of ritual purification, where the king's body was prepared for mummification before burial. The alignment of the temple, perfectly in line with the Great Sphinx, hints at a deep spiritual connection. But not everyone agrees. Other researchers, including some alternative historians, propose that this temple, and perhaps even the Sphinx itself, may be far older than previously thought. They point to signs of water erosion on the Sphinx enclosure, suggesting that the structures were exposed to heavy rainfall long before the known dynastic period, possibly over 9,000 years ago. If true, the Temple of the Sphinx could be a remnant of a lost civilization, a culture that existed before the rise of ancient Egypt. Some go further, speculating that the temple may be connected to the mythical Atlantis, or a forgotten chapter of humanity's past. Adding to the mystery is the fact that beneath the Sphinx, ground-penetrating radar has revealed the existence of hollow chambers and tunnels. No one knows exactly what lies inside. Some believe these may be storage rooms for religious artifacts or tombs for forgotten priests. Others hope for something more, perhaps a hall of records containing scrolls or writings from a time before history began. Despite these possibilities, the Egyptian authorities have restricted full exploration of the site, citing concerns over preservation. This has only fueled curiosity and suspicion. Why not open the chambers? What secrets lie beneath the paws of the Sphinx? What we do know is this: the temple's massive stones, its stark, undecorated walls, and its perfect alignment with the Sphinx point to a level of planning and sophistication that still amazes modern engineers. Whoever built it, and whenever it was built, knew the land, the stars, and the sacred geometry of the cosmos. The forgotten Temple of the Sphinx may not be as famous as the pyramids, but it is every bit as mysterious. It stands as a silent sentinel of Egypt's deepest secrets. a place where the ancient past continues to whisper beneath the sand. For over 3,000 years, ancient Egypt stood as one of the greatest civilizations the world had ever known. A land of pharaohs and pyramids, gods and gold, knowledge and power. Its monuments reached to the heavens. Its kings were worshipped as gods. But like all empires, Egypt's reign eventually came to an end. The fall of ancient Egypt did not happen in one single moment. It was a slow unraveling, a series of internal struggles and external pressures that weakened the kingdom over time. It began with the end of the New Kingdom, around 1070 BCE. After centuries of prosperity, Egypt faced internal corruption, weakened rulers, and economic decline. The once mighty pharaohs lost their grip on power, and local warlords, high priests, and foreign mercenaries began to claim control over parts of the land. The great temples fell into neglect. Tombs were looted. The unity of Egypt fractured. Then came the foreign invaders. First, the Libyans and Nubians seized power, installing their own dynasties. Next came the Assyrians, who swept through with brutal force. They captured cities, exiled leaders, and plundered temples. Egypt's ancient gods watched in silence as foreign kings wore the double crown. But perhaps the most devastating blow came with the arrival of the Persians in the 6th century BCE. They ruled Egypt as a satrapy, a province of the Persian Empire, stripping it of its independence and wealth. And then, in 332 BCE, Egypt's fate changed forever. Alexander the Great, the young Macedonian conqueror, swept into Egypt and was welcomed as a liberator. The Egyptians hailed him as a new pharaoh. After his death, his general Ptolemy founded a Greek dynasty that would rule for nearly 300 years, a time of learning and blending of cultures, but also the slow erosion of Egypt's ancient soul. Under the Ptolemies, especially rulers like Cleopatra VII, Egypt tried to hold on to its traditions while navigating the stormy politics of the Roman world. Cleopatra's alliances with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony were desperate attempts to preserve Egypt's independence. But after her death in 30 BCE, Rome took control, and Egypt became a province of the Roman Empire. From that moment on, Egypt was no longer ruled by pharaohs, but by foreign governors. The temples of the old gods fell silent. The hieroglyphic script faded into memory. The knowledge of the priests was lost. Egypt became a shadow of what it had been. Still proud, still magnificent, but no longer free. And yet Egypt did not truly die. Its spirit lived on in its ruins, its myths, and its stories. The pyramids still stood, defying time. The Nile still flowed as it always had. And across the centuries, poets, scholars, and travelers would come to gaze at what remained, trying to understand a civilization that had once touched the stars. The fall of ancient Egypt was not a sudden collapse, but a fading light, slow, inevitable, and hauntingly beautiful. It reminds us that even the greatest empires must bow to time. In a world ruled by men and gods, where the throne of Egypt was passed from father to son, one woman rose against tradition and claimed the power of a pharaoh. Her name was Hatshepsut, and she would become one of the most successful and remarkable rulers in all of ancient Egyptian history. Hatshepsut lived during the 18th dynasty, around 1479 BCE, a time when Egypt was wealthy, powerful, and expanding its influence across the known world. Born the daughter of Thutmose I, she married her half-brother Thutmose II, and after his death, she acted as regent for his young son, Thutmose III. But Hatshepsut was not content to rule in the shadows. Over time, she took on the full powers of a pharaoh. She did something no woman had done before. She declared herself king. She wore the royal headdress, the false beard, and the traditional shendit kilt, all symbols of pharaonic authority. Many expected chaos, resistance, or failure. Instead, Hatshepsut ruled wisely and peacefully for over 20 years, bringing Egypt into one of its most prosperous eras. She was not a conqueror, but a builder. Under her reign, Egypt saw an explosion of construction and artistry. She restored temples, erected statues, and commissioned massive building projects. Her most famous achievement was the mortuary temple at Deir el-Bahari, a stunning terraced structure carved into the cliffs of Thebes. Even today, it stands as one of the architectural marvels of the ancient world. Hatshepsut also expanded Egypt's trade. She launched a famous expedition to the land of Punt, a mysterious region believed to be located in modern-day Somalia or Eritrea. Her ships returned laden with gold, ebony, ivory, exotic animals, and incense trees, rare treasures that filled Egypt's temples and markets. She ruled with stability, surrounded herself with loyal advisors like Senenmut, and emphasized her divine right to rule by claiming that the god Amun himself had chosen her. But despite her success, her legacy was not secure. After her death, Thutmose III, now fully grown, reclaimed the throne. For reasons still debated by historians, he and later rulers tried to erase her from history. Her statues were smashed, her name chiseled off monuments, and records of her reign were removed from official king lists. But Hatshepsut's story was too powerful to remain hidden forever. In the 19th century, archaeologists began uncovering evidence of her reign: statues with her face, inscriptions calling her pharaoh, and the grand temple that bore her name. Today, she is recognized as one of Egypt's greatest rulers, not just as a queen, but as a true pharaoh. Hatshepsut proved that leadership was not defined by gender, but by vision, wisdom, and strength. Her legacy is one of ambition without war, progress without conquest, and elegance without compromise. Beneath the towering pyramids and among the grand temples, the people of ancient Egypt lived rich, vibrant lives, filled with beauty, ritual, music, and meaning. Egypt was more than a land of kings and gods. It was a land of artists, farmers, dancers, scribes, and dreamers. Its art and culture were woven into every corner of daily life, and together they created a civilization that was not only powerful, but deeply human. At the heart of Egyptian culture was harmony with nature and the divine. The annual flooding of the Nile was more than a natural event. It was a sacred rhythm. Festivals were held to honor gods who brought the floodwaters and crops. Families gave thanks with music, incense, and offerings. Egyptian art was not just for decoration. It was functional, spiritual, and symbolic. Every statue, painting, or relief had a purpose: to honor the gods, celebrate the dead, or preserve a legacy. Figures were drawn in profile with wide shoulders and formal poses, not for realism, but to show order and eternal truth. Color carried meaning: green for fertility, blue for divinity, gold for the flesh of the gods. Tombs were filled with scenes of farming, fishing, feasting, and family. Not just memories, but wishes for eternity. The Egyptians believed that if something was painted or carved, it could live again in the afterlife. Music and dance were also vital. harps, flutes, lutes, and drums played during religious ceremonies, celebrations, and even while working. Dancers moved with grace, telling stories through movement. Music was used in healing rituals, royal processions, and funerals, connecting the physical world with the spiritual. The written word was revered. Scribes, trained from childhood, mastered hieroglyphs, a sacred script of over 700 symbols. They copied religious texts, recorded history, and created poems and prayers. A skilled scribe was honored, for writing preserved memory, and memory defied death. Fashion reflected both status and beauty. Men and women wore linen garments suited to the hot climate. Wealthier citizens added pleats, embroidery, and fines, jewelry, broad collars, earrings, bracelets, and golden sandals. Cosmetics were widely used. Kohl eyeliner protected the eyes from the sun and also invoked the gaze of Horus. Red ochre-colored cheeks and lips. Perfumes were made from oils, flowers, and spices. Food was seasonal and fresh. Bread and beer were staples. Fruits like dates and figs, vegetables like onions and garlic, and meats like duck or fish made up a rich diet, especially during festivals. Clay ovens, jars, and baskets were part of every household. And of course, no symbol of Egyptian culture is more beloved than the cat. Cats were sacred to the goddess Bastet, and were kept in homes not only to hunt mice, but to bring protection and grace. Killing a cat, even by accident, was a serious crime. Egyptians celebrated festivals for nearly every god, often involving feasts, boat processions, fireworks, or torchlit dances. The festival of Opet, for example, honored Amun with days of parades, music, and sacred rituals that united the gods and the people. At every level, from palaces to mud brick homes, Egyptian life was rooted in balance, community, and belief. Even children had toys and board games. One favorite was Senet, a game that represented the journey through the afterlife, fun and spiritual at once. The art and culture of Egypt reflected a civilization that sought beauty in everything, in life, in death, and in eternity. When we think of ancient Egypt, we often imagine pyramids and mummies, but Egypt was more than monuments. It was a cradle of innovation. Thousands of years ago, long before the rise of Greece or Rome, the Egyptians were building, healing, measuring, and recording the world around them with remarkable intelligence and creativity. Their inventions laid the foundation for science, technology, and daily life as we know it. One of Egypt's most brilliant inventions was writing. The Egyptians created hieroglyphs, a system of symbols that combined pictures and phonetic sounds. This was more than art. It was a way to record everything from royal decrees and religious texts to food deliveries and tax records. Over time, they developed papyrus, made from the reeds that grew along the Nile. Papyrus was the world's first form of paper, light, durable, and perfect for scrolls and books. In architecture, their achievements were astonishing. The design and construction of pyramids, temples, and tombs required advanced knowledge of mathematics, geometry, and engineering. They understood how to calculate angles, manage massive weights, and align structures with the stars, especially the rising of Sirius, which marked the annual flooding of the Nile. To measure land and build straight, they invented early versions of the plumb bob, level, and measuring rods. To keep time, they used shadow clocks during the day and water clocks at night. Their calendar, based on lunar and solar cycles, included 12 months of 30 days each, plus 5 additional days. remarkably similar to our modern system. In the field of medicine, ancient Egypt was far ahead of its time. Egyptian doctors understood how to clean wounds, set broken bones, and even perform simple surgeries. Medical papyri reveal knowledge of anatomy, illnesses, and treatments using herbs, honey, and minerals. They used willow bark, which contains the active ingredient in aspirin, and prescribed castor oil and fig extracts to treat digestive issues. They also understood the importance of hygiene. Egyptians bathed regularly, used scented oils to moisturize their skin, and invented early forms of toothpaste made from powdered ashes, eggshells, and herbs. Cosmetics weren't just for beauty. Kohl eyeliner protected the eyes from sun glare and infections. In the field of navigation, they developed sailing ships that traveled along the Nile and across the Red Sea. These ships carried goods, soldiers, and diplomats, expanding Egypt's influence through trade and exploration. Even in their homes, they made clever tools: bronze tools, pottery wheels, loom weaving, and refrigeration jars that used evaporation to keep water cool in the desert. Heat. Their understanding of physics allowed them to move massive stones with ramps, levers, and pulleys, all without machines. And let's not forget the invention of makeup, mirrors, perfume, and wigs, all symbols of Egyptian elegance that still inspire the world of fashion and self-care today. Perhaps their greatest invention was their understanding of balance, of life and death, science and spirit, function and beauty. They created not only to survive, but to endure, believing that what was built with care and purpose could last forever. Many of these Egyptian inventions were passed on to the Greeks, then to the Romans, and finally to us, woven into the fabric of modern civilization. Every time we write on paper, study the stars, or measure time, we carry a piece of ancient Egypt with us. Though often remembered for its temples and tranquil riverbanks, ancient Egypt was also a land of conflict. Across its 3,000-year history, Egypt waged wars both to protect its borders and to expand its empire. From civil wars to invasions, from epic battles to palace coups, warfare shaped Egypt's destiny and the legacy of its most famous pharaohs. The early days, Egypt's biggest threats came from within. The unification of Upper and Lower Egypt around 3100 BCE by Pharaoh Narmer ended centuries of tribal warfare. But unity was fragile, and over time, the kingdom fractured more than once. These internal conflicts, known as intermediate periods, were marked by weak rulers, rival dynasties, and chaos. It was during these times that Egypt was most vulnerable to invasion. One of the most serious threats came from the mysterious Hyksos, a foreign people from the Levant who invaded Egypt during the Second Intermediate Period. They brought horses and chariots, weapons that were unknown in Egypt at the time. The Hyksos ruled the northern part of Egypt for over a century, establishing their own kings and reshaping Egyptian military tactics. But the Egyptians did not submit forever. A strong leader arose in the south, Ahmose Furen, who drove the Hyksos out and reunited the country, marking the start of the new kingdom, Egypt's most powerful era. From that point on, Egypt became not just a defender, but a conquering empire. Under pharaohs like Thutmose III, known as the Napoleon of ancient Egypt, the Egyptian army marched into modern-day Syria and Palestine, defeating rival kings and creating a buffer zone of tribute-paying territories. He recorded his victories on temple walls, boasting of his discipline, archery, and elite chariot forces. But Egypt's most famous warrior king was Ramses II, also known as Ramses the Great. His most legendary battle was the Battle of Kadesh against the Hittite Empire, one of the largest chariot battles in history. Though the outcome was likely a draw, Ramses proclaimed it a great victory, immortalizing it in giant carvings across his temples. Eventually, this battle led to the signing of the world's first known peace treaty, a rare moment of diplomacy in the ancient world. Egypt also faced threats from the Sea Peoples, mysterious warriors who invaded the eastern Mediterranean near the end of the New Kingdom. Their attacks weakened Egypt's control over foreign territories and marked the beginning of the empire's slow decline. Wars weren't only fought with swords and spears. Palace intrigue, poisonings, and succession disputes led to bloody civil struggles. One infamous case involved Hatshepsut's memory being erased by her successor, Thutmose III, possibly a political move to restore traditional male rule. Despite their strength, Egyptian armies began to lag behind new powers like the Assyrians and Persians, who brought iron weapons, faster chariots, and new strategies. By the time Alexander the Great arrived in 332 BCE, Egypt offered little resistance. His conquest marked the end of native Egyptian rule forever. Still, Egypt's military legacy lived on. Their chariots, battle formations, and fortified cities influenced later empires. And their warriors, from spearmen to archers to temple guards, served not only their pharaohs, but their gods. Though the pharaohs have turned to dust and the golden age of the Nile has long since passed, the story of ancient Egypt has never truly ended. Its legacy lives on, not only in the sands of the desert, but in the heart of our modern world. The people of Egypt may be gone, but their ideas, inventions, and spirit still shape the way we live, think, and dream. From the moment the Rosetta Stone unlocked their language, the world began to truly listen to ancient Egypt. And what we found was breathtaking. A civilization that understood time, measured the stars, practiced medicine, governed with law, and worshipped with extraordinary beauty. Egypt was not just a kingdom of temples and tombs. It was a civilization of visionaries. One of Egypt's greatest legacies is its art and architecture. The majestic pyramids of Giza, the massive columns of Karnak, and the haunting symmetry of tomb paintings have inspired architects, artists, and designers for centuries. Even modern buildings echo their forms. Their art, precise, symbolic, elegant, continues to influence styles in everything from jewelry to furniture to fashion. In mathematics and science, the Egyptians developed early systems of geometry, used to measure fields after the Nile's flood, and to align their buildings with incredible accuracy. Their knowledge of astronomy helped create calendars that laid the foundation for the ones we still use today. They also influenced how we govern and record knowledge. Their use of writing, through hieroglyphs, papyrus scrolls, and scribal schools, created a culture that valued memory and literacy. This inspired the Greeks, and, through them, the entire Western world. In medicine, the Egyptian practice of healing through herbs, surgery, and spiritual care predates and influences Greek and Roman medicine. Some treatments and techniques, like using honey for wounds or willow bark for pain, are still used in some form today. Egypt's legacy is also spiritual. Their focus on balance, ma'at, the idea of cosmic order, justice, and harmony, became a core ethical principle that resonates even in modern philosophies and religions. Their belief in the afterlife gave rise to the idea that what we do in life echoes into eternity, a concept found in many of today's spiritual traditions. But perhaps their greatest legacy is their enduring mystery. Despite centuries of study, ancient Egypt still holds secrets. Chambers lie unopened. Texts remain untranslated. Symbols continue to provoke wonder. This mystery fuels imagination in books, films, music, and museums. Children learn the name Tutankhamun before they know the names of most modern leaders. The fascination is eternal. Every time someone stands before a pyramid, reads a myth of Osiris, or gazes into the golden eyes of a funerary mask, they connect with a world that existed over 4,000 years ago. Egypt teaches us that civilizations can rise, fall, and rise again, not through armies, but through memory. In truth, the story of ancient Egypt is not just a history, it is a legacy of wonder, a reminder that even in the deepest deserts of time, greatness leaves footprints that never truly disappear. And so, the Nile still flows, the stars still shine over Giza, and the spirit of Egypt lives on, not just in ruins, but in us. End of script. Thank you for traveling through time. May your dreams be filled with pyramids, stars, and the whispering sands of ancient kings.